Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MioNMA podcast. One day late today because had a busy week. I'm in the middle of a job hunt right now, and that leads to a slightly unpredictable schedule as far as things are concerned, which delayed the research for the picks and has delayed the recording of this episode until Friday. Normally, I do it on Thursday. Anyways, usual deal here. Do not, as far as betting is concerned, I am going to talk about the betting. I'm going to talk about the odds. I'm going to talk about what I'm betting on. But to be clear, this is not a path to financial freedom. I'm keeping that line in there. I like that line. And at the end of the day, do not bet what you cannot afford to lose. MMA is a far, far too unpredictable sport just based on its very nature, like the small gloves, the knockouts, etc. Like even that is in itself unpredictable and volatile. Then you have the fact that fighters often fight injured. You have the fact that the judges are, let's just say, often not really doing their job correctly. And there's even a great deal of variance through like refereeing that can lead to just some unpredictable things. So if you're betting 20 grand on something, don't. and don't come crying to me if you pick someone I said was probably going to win and you put a lot of money on them and they lose. So let's get on to this here. Let's talk about the card overall real quick. This is the Lemos versus Jandiroba card at the UFC Apex. Not very good. I kind of understand why, because of course this was supposed to have Miranda Maverick versus Tracy Cortez on it. It does not anymore because Cortez had to go and main event against Thug Rose. And then it also had Dan Ige originally booked against Joe Anderson Brito, which was a really fun potential fight. Brito got hurt, ended up being Ige versus Mariscal, and then Ige ended up fighting Diego Lopez on the UFC pay-per-view on like literally hours notice. So that fight is off of this card as well. And if you put those two fights on this card, it's probably a notably better one, but it's still a weirdly structured one. And a lot of fights that I don't like the dynamic that they are. Now, the main event between Lemos and Jandiroba, that's pretty good. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Hollowball versus Khrushchevsky. I think that's going to be a fun fight. I think Garcia versus Sting, Suwo Choi, will also be a pretty fun fight. I think Cody Durden, Bruno Silva is an underrated, awesome fight that I'm looking forward to. And then you also have Hyder Emil and Ji Young Lee, which is like doing something useful, I suppose, even if I'm a little bit worried about the fight quality. Brian Kelleher versus Cody Gibson, that's pretty good. And Miranda Maverick versus Dion Barbosa. But like at the same time, you also have fights like Mohammed Usman versus Thomas Peterson, which I think is fairly silly, and I don't really understand the logic behind it. Luana Carolina versus Lucy Pudilova at 120. Is this? Oh, this is at 125. So Pudilova's coming down. Okay. I might want to rethink my pick. No, I'm going to stick with my pick. And then like Radzhabov versus Trey Ogden. I'm not looking forward to that. I don't understand that one at all. And Duo Choi versus Bill Algeo is kind of a weird fight in the sense that, don't get me wrong, the idea behind it, and if you're going to do something with Superboy Duo Choi, is pretty solid. But at the same time, Choi is just kind of like a really depressing fighter right now, so it's never really going to be a positive of the card. And then Brad Tavares versus Jung Young Park, which I like Jung Young Park. I like the Iron Turtle. I want to make that 100% clear, and we're going to talk about that fight in depth, but that is a fight that doesn't really make a lot of sense, realistically speaking. So you have a fair number of fights that don't really make any sense, and there's no real jewel to this card. Again, I suppose that was supposed to be Cortez versus Maverick, or that was supposed to be Ige versus Brito, but at the end of the day, we end up with something that is, I will give the credit that there is no debuting fighter on this card, so like 2 thumbs up there, but it's a card that I think will have very, very little impact going forward. So let's roll into the actual fights here and talk about them. Amanda Lemos versus Verna Jandiroba. I had like a weird 3-phase thing with this fight of realization. Is like stage 1 was, Lemos appears to be losing a step. She's 37 years old. She has a style that's very physically demanding and very much requires athleticism to win. There's not a lot of good technique behind it. It's kind of a bully style. It's the sort of thing that is going to age poorly. And Jandiroba has got a, structured style that, as long as her cardio holds up, will probably function pretty well. She's very, very tough. She's a truculent pressure grappler. And that probably means she's going to win. Then I went into stage 2 where I was like looking at Jandiroba's record and going, there really aren't a lot of physically imposing opponents here. There is like Lupi Godinez, but Lupi Godinez is a notably not dangerous striker who kind of often has to wrestle to win. So like has to play into Jandiroba's game. And that was why Jandiroba was able to win. And also I picked, Godinez to win that fight. So I'm a little sour about it. And so maybe Lemos has this. Like she's the hard hitter, the stinger that Jandiroba hasn't really fought. She is hard to take down and hard to finish. So maybe she's got this. And then stage 3 was like, but this is a main event. That means it's 5 rounds long. Lemos gets tired. And when she gets tired, she tends to clinch a lot. She tends to rest. She tends to use that as a safety blanket for recovery. And that's not something you want to be doing against Jandiroba because she will make you work in the clinch and she will take you down. She will even pull guard and do like the Demi and Maya thing where like you pull guard and then like charge into a single leg basically and reverse it and use it as a scramble and a sweep. So at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Jandiroba, but I do worry about this fight for her because Lemos is very, very powerful. And let's say that early on, Lemos puts in some like decent shots on the feet, hurts Jandiroba, takes, I don't know, maybe the first 2 rounds really clearly. And then from that point onwards, it's like Jandiroba getting her down, not being able to finish her because Lemos, outside of Jessica Andrade, and to be clear, it doesn't really matter how you get finished by Jessica Andrade, but it's not actually, it means nothing against anyone else because Andrade is that kind of, just silly, freakish, one-of-a-kind fighter that standing arm triangle choke, which is her only submission loss, really doesn't matter. So I don't really see Jandiroba finishing her. So that means Jandiroba has to go the distance. And if the judges appropriately prioritize damage, that could swing things for Lemos. So I could see this going to like a split decision and being like a case of like Jandiroba winning rounds vis-a-vis being on top in the grappling exchanges and Lemos being tired and not dangerous anymore, winning those late rounds. But in the early going, things being very, very difficult. But like I said, I'm going to go with Jandiroba. I cannot get to the point where I pick Lemos because she's facing a good takedown artist with good cardio and granite chin durability over 5 rounds. It's a problem. So Jandiroba by decision. She is a minus 125 to minus 138 favorite. Lemos plus 100 to plus 114. Co-main event fight, Brad Tavares versus Jung Park. I want the Turtle to win. And I'm putting that out there because I think that needs to be a bit of a disclaimer when it comes to this fight. Brad Tavares is one of my least favorite fighter types. It's because he hooked me. He fooled me. He came into the Ultimate Fighter. He knocked somebody out really, really badly too. And it was kind of like, all right, this is a kid who from his teens is training with Ray Sefo. He's got good physicality. He's a solid athlete. He's going to be great. He's going to progress. Things are going to come together. And he's just going to be like something we actually look forward to for a number of years watching fight. And it never, ever happened. Never. He has made a career out of being a very hard to take down guy who will win unconvincing striking exchanges and pick up like split decisions and so on. Like nothing convincing outside of I think he has like 2 TKOs. Or he'll get nuked or bullied by powerhouse fighters like a Bruno Silva or a Gregory Rodriguez, DDP, Edmund Shavazian, whatever whoever you want to use. By the way, somehow DDP went the distance with this man. I didn't rewatch the fight because it's just not similar to like the dynamic here. I generally pick like 3 or 4 fights that are, appropriate to the actual matchup to watch. And obviously, like the similarities between DDP and Jung Park are very limited. So, I didn't rewatch that fight. Maybe I should at some point, but I'm kind of curious how he survived that again. I have no real memory of it. But that's not Park. Park doesn't have a lot in common with those guys. But what he does have is a really good jab and a tendency to work at a really good pace. I want to see him put on something similar to what he did to Eric Anders, where, like, yes, he wasn't able to get the takedowns like he would have wanted. He wasn't able to overpower Anders. Of course he can't. He wasn't able to really control Anders. But Anders is similar to Tavares in the sense that while he is a physical specimen and so on, and a much less technical fighter, because of course he's a former football player, whereas again, Tavares training with Ray Sefo from his teenage years onwards, kind of a big difference. But Park was able to just kind of output him and, take a split decision. I'm kind of hoping for the same thing. Maybe I'm overrating Park's chances here because I really like Park. I don't like Tavares. So, do with that what you will, but I'm going with Park by split decision. Park is the favorite, minus 160 to minus 165. Tavares is plus 130 to plus 136. Steve Garcia versus Suwo Choi, a.k.a. The Sting. Going with Garcia by TKO, even though I feel like Choi is a far, far better fighter. Like, Choi is one of those fighters that if you watch him at the beginning of a fight, you watch like the first 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, he is very, very good. Like, his striking, he has a really good feel for counter-striking. He has good power. He has good speed. He has a excellent frame, 6 foot tall, featherweight, 74.5-inch reach. Big guy, reasonably good grappling defense and, takedown defense, grappling defense. Like, really very good. But the problem is that if you watch his fights, all the way through, you keep watching past those 3 minutes, you'll note that he really seems to lose heart and not understand when someone survives what he's doing to him. Like, he did drop Mike Trizano, for example, and then ended up losing that fight because Mike Trizano just fought through it. There are a couple of other examples of this. Like, there are a number of examples of him, like, being able to hurt people, if not drop them entirely. But like Josh Kulabau, Alex Caceres, Gavin Tucker, these are all people that he hurt and then ended up losing to anyways. Yarno Aarons, he hurt and somehow managed to hang on to a win. But, yeah. Like, it's just that, like, his wins are so not good. They're Suman Mokhtarian, who is like one of the worst fighters you're ever going to find in the UFC, like, annals. Like, he's a candidate for worst featherweight ever. And then you have Yusuf Zalal, who's just not very physically imposing. You have Julian Erosa, who is like tailor-made to lose to Suwo Choi because Erosa gets popped early because he starts cold. And if you've got power, you tend to knock him out very, very early. But at the end of the day, your best win is Yarno Aarons. I'm taking Garcia. I just assume that Garcia will get hurt, but like what he does is tank shots and be exceedingly durable, keep coming forward and hit you with hard, very awkward looking shots. But he does have like that natural power. So Garcia by TKO, unless Sting can channel his inner Mahashate, who basically did one shot kill Steve Garcia. We're going that direction. Garcia minus 148, to minus 160. Choi plus 120 to plus 135. Looking forward to it. It should be like a decent scrappy fight, but I don't know. It's one of those ones where I think both of these guys are guys that should be used as a test for like up and coming fighters, which neither of them are. Garcia is 32 and not very good. Choi is 31, good but very, very flawed. And realistically, while this is going to be a fun fight, it doesn't go anywhere. Like if Garcia wins this fight, I'm not going to change any opinion on him. And if Choi wins the fight, I guess there's a world where that changes opinion of him. Like if Garcia does take a lot of his best shots and then he still wins, maybe that's a thing, but I don't think so. Then we have Kurt Hallbaugh versus Kanan Khrushchevsky, taking Kurt Hallbaugh by TKO. Simply this is Khrushchevsky is a can crusher. Like you look at his record, his wins are over very bad opponents. This does not mean that he's not good. He's a 6 foot tall lightweight, 73 inches. He's got an excellent frame. He's strong. He's fast. He's powerful. He has a decently well-rounded skill set where he can strike, he can take down, he can grapple. Like, he is not a bad fighter. It's just, if you look at the list of people who have beaten Kurt Hallbaugh, the 8 men are Trey Ogden, Thiago Moises, Shane Burgos, Ronnie Barcelos, Magomed Rasul Hasbulaev, a.k.a. Frodo. By the way, pour one out for Frodo for never getting to fight in the UFC. That man was a monster, and I feel like a lot of people just do not know him. Andre Harrison, Super Steve Styler, and Pat Healy. Like, these are guys who are not just they don't just bully you. Like, I guess Pat Healy kind of does, but like Pat Healy is like really physically imposing and whatever. And in a takedown game that Khrushchevsky tends to not really want to do. But like these are good fighters. These are fighters who have tricks of the trade, have depth to them. And Khrushchevsky really doesn't. And the thing about Khrushchevsky that really, really kind of annoys me is that he wants to be a striker. And it's not that he's not a striker, whatever, but like it's the best part of his game is the takedown to top control game. And it's a game that he has to be persuaded to actually do. So I think he'll just kind of let Holloway have the fight that Holloway wants to have, which is a relatively scrappy, high octane, thing. And I don't think Khrushchevsky has a great chin. He's a pretty bad defensive fighter, and he has been knocked out twice. So I'm going with Holloway by TKO. Holloway is the underdog. That's my hot pick. He's plus 110 to plus 116. Khrushchevsky minus 130 to minus 143. I get why. I understand. Holloway has been cut, I think, twice from the UFC. So, I get it. But I just don't have that faith in Khrushchevsky. Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. This is another fight where I'm going to be picking the guy that I really don't want to win. I don't want Cody Durden to win. And I will freely admit that some of it is that he just seems like kind of a crappy person. But the other part of it is that he just doesn't seem like that. He's the much less fun fighter than Bruno Silva. He is a wrestle boxer to his core. He's going to work at a high pace. He's going to work takedowns. He's going to take you down a lot. He's not really going to offer a tremendous fight finishing option from the feet or on the ground. And that makes him just kind of a little bit dull. Whereas Bruno Silva is this fun, kind of knockout / club and subs / submission threat, good BJJ guy. I just really like Bruno Silva. He's overachieved what I thought. I honestly thought Silva would come into the UFC and more or less just get run over because he's a little bit small. And realistically, I don't think that there's a tremendous amount of athletic ability to him, although he clearly does have power and speed. And I thought he would get run over. So the fact that he's on a 3-fight finish streak is pretty damn impressive, but he's not the type of guy that beats Durden. Durden's issue is that he doesn't protect his neck. He gets caught in guillotines frequently. He gets caught in Darce chokes and so on. That's his problem. And Silva's been out wrestled before. He's a good grappler, but he's not a good grappler in that sense. He's a good grappler in the sense of I take your back, I out-scramble you, I, get submissions that way. He needs to be drilling a guillotine choke nonstop, basically, in the lead up to this fight. And as a result, I got to go with Durden. It's more like the fights that Silva loses than the fights that he wins, and it's not like the fights Durden loses. So, dead even odds here, by the way. Minus 105 to minus 115 on both guys. Same range. But yeah, I do have to go with Durden. Let's go Silva. Prove me wrong. Doo Ho Choi versus Bill Algeo. I can't pick Doo Ho Choi. I can't pick Superboy. He was a rising star back in 2016 when he fought Cub Swanson and had a great fight. It's in the UFC Hall of Fame for how good it is. If you've never seen Cub Swanson versus Doo Ho Choi, please go do yourself a favor. Check it out on ESPN Plus or on Fight Pass, whatever. Find it however you can find it. And watch that fight because it is a dope fight. It's insane. It's very good. It's fight of the decade worthy. But I think it broke Choi because after that he got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens and Charles Jourdain, I want to say. I really should just, pull up his roster that or his record. That would make sense, Mio. Yeah, it is Jourdain. It was Stevens and Jourdain and then a draw with Kyle Nelson, and that's over an 8-year period. So he's not been very, very active. I think there was a mandatory military service in there because, of course, he's Korean. And realistically speaking, I don't know. He never recovered. Some people take a lot that prospect loss well, and they learn from it, and they develop from it. I think it just broke Choi. And I gotta go with Algeo. Algeo is a tall, rangy fighter. He has surprising power at times. He scrambles well. He can bring you a takedown game even. And he is really, 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 really durable. I mean, he did get kind of knocked out by Kyle Nelson, but at the same time, Kyle Nelson's a big hitter and he wasn't completely out. So I think Algeo probably by TKO just kind of overwhelms Choi with activity and doggedness. Anyways, Algio minus 163 to minus 175. Choi plus 130 plus 145. It's a depressing fight. But to be clear, I don't think it's necessarily bad matchmaking because I think like almost anything is kind of depressing with Duhoi Choi right now. Hyder Emil versus Jung Young Lee. This is an interesting fight. These are two guys that have pretty good looking records, but when you look deeper into them, there's not a lot of depth to them. Like it's kind of like, yeah, Lee beat Blake Builder last time out, and Emil destroyed Fernie Garcia. I don't know how much that really proves. Like Emil is the thing with Emil is that if he was younger, I probably would be very excited because he is a good athlete. Like he is powerful, explosive, fast, seems fairly durable, has that dog in him. Like realistically, I think like all the physical, mental, like building blocks are there. It's just that he's 34 years old and he's in his second UFC fight. And I think it's like his 10th overall pro fight. So I don't know what the deal with that was. I kind of want to dig in deeper into like what happened with Hyder Emil to come to MMA quite as late as he did. Let's see here. He started amateur fighting in 2014. So he would have been 24. Just not very active, I guess. Yeah, he didn't fight at all in 2015. One fight in 2016. One in 17. One in 18. Two in 19. Nothing in 2020, not surprising. Pandemic. Once in 2021, once in 2022, once in 2023. This will be his second fight of 2024. Yeah, he's just very inactive, I guess, is what it comes down to. Because it's not like he started especially late. 24 is not insane. But anyways, getting to what I was saying, I do have to take Lee in this fight because Lee is a pretty good boxer. He is a decent scrambler, decent defensive grappler, but he is prone to getting taken down. Like his UFC road to the UFC final against I can't say the guy's name. It's like Yizha or something. He got taken down like 5 times in that fight, controlled for like 8 minutes. Like he's got some significant like wrestling deficiencies, but Emil tends to not really actually want to wrestle. He's kind of a weird Gilbert Melendez guy in the sense that he has, because he trains with El Nino Training Center, but he's got like good low kicks and wants to like power box, which isn't really what you think of from that gym. But he does have like a hard to out wrestle deal, and he can wrestle. So if he does some good game planning, he can go out there and kind of probably storm the castle of Lee. But I'm going to take Lee to be a little bit of a deeper striker, a little bit more of a combination guy, and tough, durable, not bullyable in the way that Fernie Garcia is. That's my hopes, anyways. If Emil wins, I'm not going to be like shocked or anything. Dude is, like I said, a physical powder keg. It's just I haven't seen a lot of depth in him. He hasn't needed it, but I haven't seen it. So it's hard to assume that it is there. So Lee by decision. Odds are Lee minus 190 to minus 205. Emil plus 160 to plus 165. Cody Gibson, Brian Kelleher, a battle of two old action fighters, two old dogs. I think to a certain degree, a bit of a disappointing matchup in a way because, I kind of would like to see these guys like testing out the youngsters. Like they feel like kind of the perfect things for that. But you know what? It's a fun, scrappy fight. Kelleher's got the power advantage and I think a little bit more early fight success. But he does tend to have some significantly issues with defense, both as a grappler and as a striker. And realistically, he tends to fade a little bit in fights as well. He's also 37 years old. I don't think that's getting any better anytime soon. So I'm going to go with Cody Gibson, who is also the old man here, but like the old man with a 71-inch reach, 5'10", and some interesting ability to pick up like some guillotines and stuff. So I'm going to go with Gibson by submission, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be high paced. It's going to be brutal. And Gibson's just got that durability. Like that's the thing is like the people that Kelleher tends to beat are people who have significant durability issues themselves or the ability to just be taken out of a fight. If you look at like, let's see here. Ray Rodriguez is a good example of this. Hunter Azure, Ode Osborne is just a little bit too small, honestly. That's about all there is to it. And then like decision wins over Domingo Pilarte, who's just not very good. And Kevin Kroom, who is terrible. And then like the ghost of Henan Barao and a guillotine choke back in the day over Yuri Alcantara. And Damian Stosniak, who just kind of never really went anywhere. I kind of had hopes for that guy, but he's 14-10 now. It's it's not great. It's not great. Yeah, I don't know. Gibson doesn't feel like those guys. I guess you could argue that Gibson doesn't really have a lot of like particularly good wins himself, because we're talking about like Francisco Rivera Jr. We're talking about John Dodson, who's just very, very small, and by 2021 it faded a little bit. And then a bunch of guys I don't. Okay, I remember Rolando Velasco, and of course Johnny Bedford. But like that's also I guess the thing. Johnny Bedford is like the kind of chitty guy, and you could do that. And he also guillotined Chad George, who I think has a similar weakness to the front headlock that Kelleher has. So Gibson's my pick. He is the -195 to -210 favorite. That's a little wide. And get Kelleher +160 to +170. Miranda Maverick versus Dion Barbosa, which is the short notice put together fight here that was supposed to be Tracy Cortez. No idea why it's on the prelims, because it's still one of the most impactful fights on the card. Like, Miranda Maverick is just outside the rankings. I think Jasmine Jasudavicius beat her to get a ranking. And at the same time, Barbosa is a pretty up-and-coming, fighter. I don't want to say prospect because she's 32. And I'm Mr. like, you're not a prospect after a certain age. But, she's a good fighter that's up and coming and like relatively late convert to MMA. So like she could still improve and become pretty good. Like there's a world that Barbosa could be a ranked fighter. This is just a matchup that I think Maverick will win. Don't get me wrong. You could argue that the dynamic of this matchup is similar to her loss to Jasudavicius, Erin Blanchfield, and even Macy Barber. But both of them are a little bit, all three of them are a little bit more physical than Barbosa, I think. Bigger, stronger, and particularly speaking, also a little bit more carnage enhanced, a little bit more wrestling than BJJ. You know what I mean? They have a better takedown game, I think. They have a little more chaotic of a takedown game. They also mix it with their striking fairly well. So I think Maverick will just prove to be like a little bit too hard to take down and like is the obviously better striker. Barbosa is not a very good striker. She's very much a BJJ first kind of person. She is the female equivalent of a Demi and Maya. She's not. I would use like the other female. I would say she's another version of Mackenzie Dern, but like no, there's a lot more of a put together takedown game than with Mackenzie Dern. Like there's an insanely more put together game than Dern. That's why I don't really have a female comparison for her. But yeah, it's kind of like that BJJ. Shoe Face is another example of this, of somebody who realistically, really, really good ground game, really, 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 really solid grappler. I want to be clear on that. But like Maverick is someone who is just built to not really get out grappled unless you can just pin her to the ground. I don't think that's Barbosa's game, really. We could see it, though. We could see it. But I think Maverick will outstrike her and probably stuff most of her takedowns on the way to a decision. She is a -250 to -230 favorite. Barbosa is +170 to +185. We'll see. Loic Radzhabov versus Trey Ogden. I don't have a lot to say about this fight. I just think Radzhabov is going to get neutralized by Ogden's reach, his jab, his combination striking, and the fact that realistically speaking, you don't really out-grapple, you don't really out-wrestle Trey Ogden terribly easily, and that's kind of Radzhabov's way of winning, because if you force Radzhabov to stand and swing, he's just not very good at it. He's also got really short arms. Like he's 5'11" with a 69-inch reach. For comparison purposes, I think you should have about a 71-inch reach for that. So like being 2 inches less reach than your height is a little bit weird. It's a little short. Like if you look at most of the fighters on this card, they have reaches longer than their height. Let's see here. Who doesn't? I think he's like literally the only one. I think he's literally the only person on this card that has a shorter reach than his height. There are other people in the UFC, to be clear, that have this. Like it's not that one of a kind. Oh no. Okay, Brian Kelleher is 5'6" with a 64-inch reach. Okay, so Brian Kelleher is your other guy, and Lucy Pudilova is 5'8" with a 67.5-inch reach. So two other people on the card. Anyways. I don't know. I think my problem is I just don't like this fight. Ogden is a guy you should be using as a test for up and coming prospects that have to show that they can do more than bully. And Radzhabov is 33 years old and not likely to get any better. Like, Radzepov feels like he should be testing people who, like, basically the same people. He's a hard guy to just bully, and, you know, you want to test that. I don't really understand what we're getting out of this match. I think Ogden will outpace him. I think he'll outland him, outvolume him, and get the W. For some reason, Radzepov is the favorite. Minus 115 to minus 124. Ogden plus 100 to plus 105, or minus 105. I feel pretty confident. Lena Karolina versus Lucy Pudilova. I'm picking Pudilova, but, like, I am worried because Pudilova's issue is that she's just not very physically imposing. Like, she's scrappy and scrambly and really wants to do well. But, like, you know, Eileen Perez and Jocelyn Edwards were just too physical for her. Talita Bernard was just too physical for her. And her wins are over people who are not very physical. Yanan Wu, a bunch of regional talents that really don't bear much discussion. Sarah Moras, Ji Young Kim. I don't know, maybe being down at 125 will help her out here, and she'll be a little bit more physical. I don't know. But Karolina is a mess. Like, I'm not even really sure what she's supposed to be good at. Like, she is a perfectly serviceable athlete, and I appreciate that about her. But I don't know. It's just nothing really ever seems to be intentional with her. And that's a problem. And she also can be just outpaced. So I'm going to go with Pudilova to outpace her as a volume striker / scrambler / takedown threat. And Karolina is the favorite, minus 110 or minus 100 to minus 120, plus 100 to minus 110 for Pudilova. I can't really argue with that. Like, it's just I don't like fighters that, like, I can't really make a sense of their thought process. Like, it's something it's not that I even believe that they can't work. I just don't like it, and it puts me in a negative headspace when thinking about their fights. Muhammad Usman versus Thomas Peterson. I'm going with Muhammad Usman. You're not out wrestling Muhammad Usman, and Thomas Peterson just wrestles. That is all he can do. That is it. He is a terrible striker. He is god awful. He is not particularly durable either. He is just a clinch wrestler. I am surprised they signed him, honestly. Really am. Anyways, yeah, Usman by TKO. I know he's a wooden striker or whatever, but he hits hard. He's a good athlete. He's hard to out wrestle. Blah, blah, blah. There you go. Do it. Make it happen. There you go. Usman minus 122 to minus 138. Peterson plus 102 to plus 110. You know what? I mean, I guess there is a world in which Peterson gets an early takedown. Also, here's the other thing. Here's actually the thing that really breaks Peterson. He doesn't have good cardio. He fades. I'm not really sure how you can be how you're going to be a wrestler kind of guy with bad striking, and you're going to fade and do well in the UFC. That doesn't seem like a path to victory in the heavyweight division. Like, he's kind of like, he's American Sergey Spivak without Spivak's most enduring thing, which is the repetitiveness that Spivak will keep absolutely making you tired with his relentless aggression. So anyways, there you go. I will see you after the fights. Check out the links down below for my social medias, the MMA Simulator Discord, my video game stuff over on Twitch and YouTube, and enjoy the fights.